Hello everyone, I hope everyone is fine. This is Joshua from Daily Journey with Joshua. I'm a student at Macquarie University Business School pursuing a bachelor's degree in business computing and currently in my second year. So we are doing something called Visual Basic, and it's an interesting language based on the .NET framework by by Windows or by Microsoft. So it's a very powerful language used to build desktop, Windows Phone based applications. When you visit hospitals, they usually use apps based on this type of software. It's not so popular, but it still has use cases. Most large scale softwares rely on such interfaces to do their operations. So yeah, I'm going to talk about this. So this is a basic sign up form. We could have just done something simple, but this is unique in the sense that we want the data to be persistent and be stored in a database. The database we shall use is SQL. So this is basic. This is just a form. How do you create a form? You come here on File, New, Project. When you create a project, it will automatically create for you a form, and the form is usually here down. When you check your Solution Explorer, the Solution Explorer is basically the section in your IDE. The IDE is Visual Studio. The one I'm using is 2008. You could be using a later version, it will still work. So in the Solution Explorer, we have all elements or files relating to our project are all in the Solution Explorer. So these are the Windows forms, and I actually have 3 forms in my Solution Explorer under my project. And what we're interested in is the sign up form. We want when someone signs up, the information is submitted to a database somewhere. So these are what we call labels. You can see there's a first name, last name. These are just labels, and this is a text box. The reason as to why I've used text boxes is I want the user to write their input inside the text box. When they write their input inside the text box, it's submitted to a database to be saved. So that's essentially what we are going to be doing tonight, or depending where you're coming from, that's what we're going to do. But I would like to drop a few tips. These labels, since we will not use them in our coding, I will not rename them. I'll leave them the way they are. To change the appearance of a label, you come here under appearance and you look for the text property. You can see there I have first name. But then when you go to your text boxes, typically text boxes, depending on which one you put on your form, you can drag it from here and you look for the text box and you literally drag it there. You can find it, yeah, here. The issue with the text box is they usually come with default numbers like text box 1, text box 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. Those text boxes become very difficult while you're coding. It's becoming difficult. It becomes very difficult for you to choose and understand what text box were you using, because you'd be finding it difficult to know which text box that you're referring to. So a good practice I like, if it's a first name and there's a text box below, I like changing its name. The name is different from the appearance. The appearance is what someone sees, but the name is the name of the field itself. That's the one we refer to when we are coding or when we are implementing the logic. So you come here under the design property and you will find a sub-property that's called name. Now that name is the one we call the other side as we are coding. We shall see when we reach there. So the reason as to why I like making it consistent with what it represents is that I won't be confused while I'm calling it. I won't have to hunt to figure out what text box was it. Is it text box 2 or text box 1? It just makes everything clear. Even last name, it has the same thing. It's last name text box. Even username, it has the same thing. Username text box. Even email, it's the same thing. Email text box. Even password, it's the same thing. Password text box. It just makes work really easy. So now that we know our fields, the fields we are going to store in a database are first name, last name, username, email, and password. So we are going to go and connect our database. So the database we are going to use is MySQL, but the server we are going to run is localhost. We are going to run locally. So we are going to use XAMPP. Yes, it's a control panel that provides you access to these various services. So It works locally, you don't need internet for it. So I'm just going to press start on Apache. Apache is like the server. Then our most interesting part where we're going to focus a lot is MySQL. So I'll press start on MySQL. And just like that, it goes on. Sometimes, depending on the machine you're using, you might start MySQL and your port might be blocked. So it will show you an error here. Don't panic. Usually that's because there is another version of SQL occupying that port. So you can run as an administrator, or you can disable it, or you can remove it, depending on your preferences. Yeah, sometimes people have MySQL Workbench and it causes issues, but yeah, that's how you work with it. Or sometimes you may not even have those softwares and the port just refuses to connect. You can close the app and open it again. It might get fixed and it actually works. So we're going to open the admin panel. When we open the admin panel, it will take us to the browser and it will show you something called phpMyAdmin. That's where we're going to create a database and create table where we're going to store the information that is picked from the other form that we saw in Visual Basic. So let's click admin and see what happens. So let's see our control panel. So when you open your control panel, after clicking the admin from XAMPP, it will bring you to localhost. You can clearly see the address is 127.0.0.1. That's the localhost address, meaning this runs locally. You don't need the internet to do this. So our first step is going to create a database. These are databases. So I'm going to create a new database called simple project. I'm going to create a database called simple project. So you simply say simple project and create. Now our database has created, we have created a database called simple project. You can clearly see it's here. We have a database here called simple project. Now that you've created your database, the next step will be to create a table. So we go back to our project and see which fields are we creating to be exact. And when you look very well, we are creating the first name, the last name, the username, the email, the password. Those are 5 fields. However, there is the general sense that people have unique identities, right? There's a general sense that people have unique identities. People are unique. There are so many people. We could have people coming in with the same name. That's a variable that's possible. People could have the same name, right? We could have people having the same name. So when you have a scenario where you have people having the same name, how will we uniquely identify them? We'll uniquely identify them using IDs. So instead of us having only 5 columns, we will add a 6th column, being the unique identifier of every user that's joining our platform. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to create our table based on this data. So let's go to the control panel and we create our own table. So the table name is going to be called users. I like calling it users, it's easy. And the columns are going to be, instead of 5, because we had a first name, a last name, a username, an email, and password, we're going to make them 6. Because those were 5, now we're making them 6 because we are adding a user ID. So we create. It will bring you to this interface where we have our columns and we're going to actually start creating our columns. The first column, I usually like it being a user ID. So we're going to say user ID. The second column will be a first name. We will say it's a first name. I like using an underscore. The next column will be a last name. The next column will be a username. The next column will be an email. And then finally, the last column will be a password. So let's go through the data types. A user ID. For our user ID, since we are not picking it from a user, we're going to auto increment it. What that means is that the user doesn't even have to create a user ID, but rather when they sign up, the system automatically gives them a unique ID. So yeah, we're going to set our data type as integer. Then you scroll to the right, you see a bunch of options. Here you'll see attributes. We're not going to do this. Then you see now index. This is something where you're interested. You should definitely click this. Then you look, what do you want to set? Do you want to set it as a primary key? Do you want it to be unique? What do you want? Since this is the unique identifier, a unique identifier is always a primary key in a table. So we set it to primary. You say go. Then here where it says a_I comments, that's the auto increment. You check mark it, meaning we've turned it on. Now the issue with auto increment is that it works with integer type. You're probably wondering, wait, you have not put the length of integers. Why is that so? The reason as to why I didn't put the length of integers is by default, this interface that I'm using will default to 11 as the length of integers. So you don't necessarily have to put that. So that's the maximum length of integers. If you want to use even larger integers, you could choose a different data type. That could be maybe big int and so on. But the AI increment, the auto increment works with integer, it doesn't work with other data types. So the next column is first name. First name is a string, so we'll use varchar. And of course, I don't expect someone's name to exceed 20 characters. Last name is the same story, varchar. Why are we using varchar instead of string? The issue with varchar is that varchar it supports multiple characters. So that's why we're using varchar. The username is supposed to be varchar because someone's username can be a combination of letters and numbers. So I'll set a username to have 50 characters max. Then we scroll to the left where it says now index. We'll set it to unique. What this means is that someone's username is going to be unique. We can't have people having the same username. It's like when you sign up for a website, the username is usually unique. It shouldn't be the same. Like it should be unique. We shouldn't have the same username. So an email is of course a varchar type. So emails are also unique. So you come here and you set it to unique. We don't want users coming. We don't want users coming to the database with the same. We don't want users coming to the database with the same email, with the same username. It should be unique to every person. Password is going to be varchar. The maximum number of characters will be 50. Passwords need not be unique. We can have the same passwords as users, but our usernames and emails should be different, plus the user ID. So once all this is done, you come and save. After saving, your table will be created. So you come here on structure and you look it up. You'll notice we have all these fields. You have user ID, we have first name, we have last name, we have username, we have email, we have password. And you can clearly see there is this key, meaning we put a unique index on this, meaning these fields will be unique. The user ID, which is our primary key, has this gold-like key. So now that this is all done, we are going to go back to our Visual Basic and we are going to actually start connecting the database and get the nitty-gritty going on. So now that you're back in your VB, you're back in your Visual Studio, the next part is to actually start with the database. The first step is to connect, to add a reference. A reference is like a point. It's like an interface that we're going to use to connect to a database. Without a reference, we cannot reach the database. So it's like the first step in a database, usually we have to import a certain thing. We come here and we import it. There's an import statement that we have to use, but that import statement won't work. When you try it and say imports, and then you say MySQL, you see, it's not automatically bringing it for me. It's not even displaying MySQL, meaning we cannot do MySQL in this database. We cannot use MySQL in this form. I beg your pardon. You can't use MySQL in this VB form. So you come back here where we were. You come in your Solution Explorer, you see the project title, which is VBL and SQL. You right click, then you say Add Reference. So I'm probably wondering, what are we looking for in adding references? References are things that help our project function well. Like you saw, we cannot use MySQL on this database unless we add a reference to a database. So that reference is called a connector. And a connector is installed on your machine. If you want to do SQL with Visual Basic, you have to download a MySQL connector. Typically, some machines come with a connector pre-installed, but if you don't have it, you will download it on Oracle's website. They have the connectors there. You can get any version there. They have an archive. You can find all the versions that you want. For me, specifically today, I'm using 6.9.7.0. So you just look for something that says mysql.data. So once we see this, we just tap it and say OK. Once that is done, you come and click the sign up button. It'll bring you to this. This is the reason why I named my buttons. Now I'm not confused. You can have hundreds of lines of code. You won't be scared or worried because you will know, okay, this is a sign up form because you see the name is sign up button. This is a sign up button. So let's go back and actually try to write our import statement. So you say imports. Now you see it has changed. MySQL is now showing. Thanks to us adding that reference, without it, you can't use MySQL services. So we simply come down, we select MySQL dot data dot MySQL client. Once that is done, we actually go to our project. So the first step in your project, the reason as to why I've written the import statement up here and not down here or here is that I want it to be globally accessed. What I mean by that is I want this entire class to access this import statement. Because if you put it somewhere like here in the button, it means anywhere else it won't be accessible, and we don't want that because we want this import statement to be globally accessed by every object, every class within this file. So we come here. The first step is to create a connection string. So the first step is to create a connection string. The connection string is like, in layman terms, it's like an address that contains all the nooks and crannies, all the details that this program needs to send data to a database. All of those details are in something we call a connection string. So we're talking about the server, the user ID, the password, the character set. All those things are contained in a connection string. Think of it like it's essentially the string that contains everything this program needs to communicate with the database effectively. So, like the statement says, create a connection string. It's of a string type. So we said dim. Dim is a keyword used to create variables in Visual Basic. So we said dim constring. You can call it whatever you want. Me, I'm just going to say dim constring as string. So it's a string type. So second string as string is equal to. Now we don't use single quotes in Visual Basic because when you use single quotes, it's like you're trying to comment. This is a comment right here. That's why I use the single quote. So for strings, we use a set of double quotes. So we are going to actually start our string. our connection string. So it has all the details that the program needs to communicate with the database. The first detail is the server. The order doesn't really matter, but we just need to know that our server is called localhost. You terminate after each detail. The next detail is user ID. User ID is called root. The next detail is password. The password isn't there. You clearly saw when I was logging in XAMPP, when I connected to PHPMyAdmin, they did not ask for a password, so the password is empty. Then, a very important detail is the database name. What's the name of the database that we're trying to connect to? So we go back and trace the database name. This is where people get errors because they usually forget the database name. Now our database is called Simple Project. It's in small letters. So we go back and write that here. The database is called Simple Project. We terminate. Optionally, you can include the character set. The character set is like the encoding system we are using. You're telling the program, use this character set. Now, one of the most popular character sets today is UTF-8. So once you do this, you're essentially done with the connection string. So we actually go to the nitty-gritties. The nitty-gritties will be, we are going to establish a connection. That's the first part. Create a new SQL connection. Because we now have our connection string. What next? What next is that we need to create a connection string, a MySQL connection. We need to establish a new SQL connection. So to do that, we're going to use the using keyword. You will say using what? A variable called con. You can call this whatever you want. Using con as new. Now, whenever you see the new keyword, just know we are creating a new object. So we are going to say using con as new MySQL connection. So you look for something down here that says MySQL connection. That's the one we're using. So we are going to say using con as new MySQL connection. What this line does, it has created a new MySQL connection object called con. So you're probably wondering, why have we used the using keyword? The reason as to why we are using the using keyword is that using keyword is safe, first off, and it handles the session well. It closes the session well. You don't want the session staying established in your memory. That can slow it down, it can cause various things. So to simplify your work, you use the using keyword. So we just say using con as new MySQL connection. Now this MySQL connection object takes an argument, and the argument it takes is the name of the connection string. So we'll just copy this entire connection string and paste it inside the parentheses. After pasting it inside the parentheses, we enter. That's step 1. Now we are done with step 1. Step 2 is going to create our SQL query, if I may call it that. We are going to say create the SQL query. The SQL query is the statement that we are going to use to write into our database. Yes. To write something into our database, we use the syntax insert into. So that's called an SQL code. You can call it a query, you can call it a code. That's our SQL code. So I'm going to change this word to create the SQL code. Now that code is a string. So to do that, we are going to create the SQL insert statement. But this is where I want you to pay attention. That string, anything relating to writing things to a database is error prone. we expect errors to easily occur there. So when something is error prone, you wrap it inside a try block, a try catch block. The reason as to why we do that is that when you handle those errors, your program can continue running regardless. Because when you don't handle errors, once an error is found, the program ends prematurely or it crashes. It doesn't continue executing. So to solve those problems, we use error handling to help us. So anything error prone, we're going to wrap it inside a try catch block. So we go to the next line and we simply say try and you enter. Now you see they're saying try, then they're saying here down catch ex as exception, and then they're saying end try. What this means is the try block is where we write everything relating to our SQL is going to be written inside our try block. Now if any error be found, it will be called by this catch block. It will be called, that's why they're saying catch ex. Ex is just a placeholder for whatever error the try block sends to the catch block. Now once the catch block receives that error, it finds a specific exception from the exception class. Now the exception class is one that was built into VB that stores various types of errors and issues that you might encounter during the system. So that exception class stores built-in errors. That's how I understand it. So we are going to say message box dot show. Message box is what we used to display in VB. So we're going to say message box show. Then you see something like we create a string that says something went wrong. You're going to say something went wrong. Then we are going to concatenate. To concatenate in VB, we just use the and symbol. So we're going to say something went wrong and ex dot message. Now what this last line I've written means is that if the try block finds anything error prone here, it's going to send the error to the catch block. The catch block will store that error in the ex object. In the ex, this is like a placeholder as an exception. Now here, when you see this line, something went wrong, you will see a message. In case an error is found, you see something that says something went wrong, but something else will be added. Here, when we say ex message, this line of code is going to check the exception class and it will find an exception that matches the error that has occurred here. So for example, it's maybe you're trying to insert a key somewhere, that you're trying to create a duplicate in the database, something related to the database, the error will be specified. So this will enable us to get built-in errors that are specified, so you don't have to try to figure out which error could it be. This message will make life simple for you, this error handling form. So we are going to our try block and we are going to create the SQL statement. But before we do that, we created a connection, but we did not open it. So to open the connection, we say con dot open. Now that our connection is open, let's create our SQL code. The SQL code we are going to use. So we are going to say dimension. You can call it SQL as, you're going to set dimension SQL as string equal to, then you open a set of quotes. Now we're going to write our SQL syntax here. Since we are trying to write data into a database, we are going to use the insert keyword. So the syntax for inserting things into a table is insert columns, values, then you write values. Insert into table name, then the columns you're trying to insert, you write the values keyword, then you open a set of parentheses, you write the actual values. That's how we essentially do it. That's how we essentially write things into a database. But before we do that, we need to go back to our database and find out what names were those fields, because SQL is case sensitive, so you need to know the exact way you wrote those fields. So we go back here and we say insert into, the table was called users. What fields are we trying to insert? The first field was user ID. Remember, it's case sensitive, that's why I'm doing this. Okay, we have written our SQL statement. So the next step is to create a new command, because yes, you have the SQL statement, but how are you going to execute it? So we need a command to handle that. So we're going to say create new SQL command. So this is the syntax. Insert into users the table name, then the fields you're inserting, user ID, first name, those fields, then the values keyword, then here is where you put the actual fields. So you're probably wondering, why didn't you call the fields the other side? I'd forgotten, I'd included user ID, but remember user ID is auto increment, so that when we're not actually writing it in, it will be automatically assigned by the system. So sorry for that, but yeah, this is essentially the syntax. So you're probably wondering, why did you just directly call those fields? The reason as to why I didn't call these fields, these ones here, is because you see, if you check here, their names are different. Their names are first name text box and so on and so forth. You're probably wondering, why didn't you call them directly? The reason as to why I didn't do that, to prevent SQL injections. Now, SQL injections is where someone goes inside this form, they pretend as if they're they pretend as if they're signing up, but in fact, they're not. They're writing SQL syntax and uploading it to your backend. So if your security is not tight, it can definitely compromise your account. You should definitely look out for that. So this is the way we safely handle such things. When you're picking input from a user, you never ever trust users. That's why we have parameterized these values. So we will pick the values safely. You'll see how. So the first step is to create a new SQL command. So the command is still created the same way using the using keyword. So you say using cmd, that can be our command, as new MySQL command. So you simply look for the MySQL command. This is it. So you say using cmd as new MySQL command. Now this one takes two arguments. It takes two arguments. The first argument is this command takes two arguments. The first argument is always the SQL code, and we have stored our SQL string into a variable called SQL. So that's the first thing you write, SQL. Now the second parameter or argument, the second argument in this MySQL command is this connection that we've created. So you say con, you just call it. So you're probably wondering, wait, what's the use of the command? Now, the use of the command is the one going to execute our SQL code. Without the command, nothing happens. There are three steps to this thing. The first step is to import at the top of your file. We did that. The second step was to create the connection string. The connection string was basically like the address containing everything that our project or program needs to communicate with the database. Essentially, the database details, everything about our project, the details about the database, the server it's on, the password, the database name, the character set. Then the next step was to create a new connection object. Now that the new creation of an object happened, the new connection object, we opened it here. We wrapped everything in a try block because we know this is error prone. Then we created our SQL string, what's essentially going to write content into the database. Now that that's done, we create a new SQL command, because without the command, you won't be able to run your program. You won't. Like, there's no way this SQL will reach the database without this command. So now that you have your command, we are going to pick our parameters, the other parameters, these ones that you saw, these ones here. We are going to actually attach values safely. So to do that, we will use this command, this new SQL command. So we will just say cmd dot. So there are a number of methods that this command can work with. Since the other ones are parameters, we are trying to safely attach values to parameters. We will say cmd parameters. Since we are trying to add values, we will select the add with values. Now, add with value, the syntax suggests that it's supposed to take the parameter as a string and the value as an object. So we go back and check what were our parameters. The first parameter was first name and it had this @ symbol. So you simply come back here and do the same. You say at, it was at fname, at fname. Then you put a comma, they are saying value as an object. So we go back to our remembrance. In our form, how did we name our text box that contained the first name? It was called first name text box. Are you seeing now why it's essential to rename your work? Now I don't have to go back trying to look for it. I'll simply search for it. Because I know the name, I know that the first name is in a first name text box. So I don't need to go check my form to find it. So I'll simply search for it. It was first name text box. Just like that, you are able to identify it. So you close your parenthesis. Just like this, here you have safely picked the first name. This is how you safely pick input from users to prevent SQL injections. Now that we have safely picked the values the users have put, we have safely actually picked them. We are just going to edit these text boxes by calling the appropriate text box. So the last name was in a last name text box. You simply look for it. You put it. What else? The username was in a username text box. So you simply put it as well. The email was in an email text box. So you simply put it as well. And as well was the password. The password had the password text box. So I simply call it. Just like this, you've safely picked your values from the user and you prevented an SQL injection. So how does this prevent an SQL injection? When the values are picked from users, they will not be stored as code, but rather it will just be taken as data to insert in a database. It will not be received as SQL code. It will be, in layman terms, it's like they'll format it as text. It won't really be text, but it won't be executed as SQL code. So your database will be safe from the SQL injection. This is the safe way to pick parameters, to pick things from users instead of you picking them directly, which can compromise your security. So the final part is to execute the instructions. So to do that, remember we said the new SQL command, its purpose is to execute this entire program. So we come and say cmd, we say cmd dot execute none query. Now once you do this, we are going to run our project and we try to, we're going to run our project and we try to insert some fields into the database. Where we are trying to insert data. So we are going to come to our form and we actually start typing details. The first detail is a first name and the person can be called Joshua. The last name can be Hatton. The username can be jhatton65. The email can be jhatton65 at gmail.com, and the password can be What password can I make? You can even say the password is the person's names. You can say Hatan 2026 maybe with percentage sign at the end. So we are going to sign up and we see whether our form works. So you sign up. Now when I sign up, nothing is happening because I did not write a message that shows a successful sign up. So we are going to go into our database and check whether the field has updated. A quick reminder, don't forget to, let's first exit this mode. Don't forget to pick the values because what this is the field itself. This is the text box field itself. We need to pick the value the user writes there. Now to pick the value, you use the text method. You set the text. So we need to actually pick the value someone will write. I forgot to pick the values. So let me come and pick them. Sorry for that. So we pick our values using the text method. It's both a getter and a setter, so it can actually pick values it can get and it can set. In this event, we're using it to get values. So we are getting values and we are appending them here, and they're going to be stored as parameters instead of basic plain values that can cause an SQL injection. So we come and run our code. We are going to run our code and wait to see what happens. So we're going to have a first name being Joshua, a last name being Hatan. We're going to have the username being jhatan, maybe 65. The password, we are still maintaining jhatan65 at gmail.com. And we are going to have a password being maybe Hatan, okay, maybe $sign. So we just sign up. Since I did not write anything in my database, like I did not write anything in the SQL code to confirm that someone has signed up, we go and check the database manually to confirm whether a record has actually been inserted. So we come here on browse and we check our table. And when we check your table, you will notice that there is an entry of that person called Joshua. The user ID is 2, the first name is Joshua, the last name is Hatan, the username is here, the password is here, and the email is here. Now in real life, you don't really store passwords directly like this, you hash your passwords, but that will be a story of another time. And also noticed in the beginning, there was some person, the thing that had an error, so I deleted that record. So we now have this record being the only record. When we go back to our database, when we go back to our form and we try to add a new user, maybe they can be called Kyle, and we can change this to Kyle, and yeah, we can even change the email to Kyle, and the password can be Kyle fashions. You can say Kyle fashions 45 maybe with a hashtag. That's that person's password. So we sign up this person and we see what happens. So when we go back to our database and we refresh, we will see that person. Are you seeing how they put the person? Their user ID is 3, the name is Kyle, the other name is Hatan, Kyle, and the details are here. So you're probably wondering, how do we implement the clear button? Because it would be appropriate if someone can clear the fields. We are going to actually do that as well. This is how you clear fields. So to actually clear fields, it's not very hard. To do that, you just come to our clear button, you double tap, then you open the clear button. Now to clear a field, we are going to use a special method in VB called the clear method. We're going to call the clear method on a field. So we look for whatever field we're interested in. For example, we had a first name text box. So you just say first name text box dot clear. You call the clear method. So they are saying clear as all text from a text box control. It's the method we are interested in. So you said first name clear. The next one was last name. So you just say last name clear. The next one was, I think we had a username. Yes. You just say username clear. The next one was email. You just call the clear method. Then the next one was password. You just clear. So you go and check it out. Does that really work? So we are going to try to rate another user. This time we are going to rate a number of users. So I can say the user's first name is Anita, the next name is Valentine, the next name of this person can be Valentine, the username can be Vale, not 226, and the email can just be like the username. Honestly, to save time, you can just say the email is @gmail.com, and then you put a password, which can be, she can have that as her password. Maybe it has a few numbers in, so you sign up. So once you sign up, the records have gone to the database. But what if I want to clear and write another person or something? We are testing. This is not how the final project looks like, but this is to learn. So let's implement and see, does our clear button work? When we press clear, let's see what happens. It literally clears our fields. So we can try another record. Maybe the person you are trying to write in is called Samuel. And maybe the name is called Mug. So the username can be some Mug. Some Mug. Maybe 45 with a percentage at the end. The email can be some123@gmail.com. Then their password can be some123, maybe with another character like Queen, maybe with a 6-7 at the end. Then you sign up, then you clear that record as well. We can have another user called Hatton. The last name could be Kasozi. The last name could be Kasozi. The username can be Kasozi. Kasozi123. The email can be after the username @gmail.com, and the password can be Pamela 349, maybe with a special character at the end. So you sign up, then you clear your form. So that's how you send data to a database, and it's stored in those records. So when we check our database, let's actually go and check, is it auto-incrementing the IDs for every new user? Is it storing our data? So when you refresh, it's showing everyone in the database, and like I said, the user ID is being auto-incremented by 1, and it's storing everyone in the database. But for real-world projects, you never store people's passwords like this. You hash them. It's like a form of encrypt. You're not really encrypting them, but you change the way they look like. In fact, it's like encryption. You don't store passwords the same way the user gives them to you. You encrypt them so that in case your database is compromised, users' passwords are safe. So that was what we had for today. We will have another continuation because this is a simple register form, but we'll also need to use a login form, and we see how does that login form actually function. So we shall see that in our next video. Thank you for watching. Like, share, subscribe, and if you feel like there is something that you didn't understand, comment below and I will answer you. If you feel like there is something that we could have done better, please comment it and we change it. Thank you so much. Have a good one.